Hey, welcome everyone to the second SaaS Marketing Rescue Workshop hosted by Austin Lawrence Group. We're a demand generation agency for software as a service firms. We've got a great panel here to help us review our 5 submissions for today. We have Jason Myers, our Chief Revenue Officer, James Ollerenshaw, a strategic advisor to our clients, and guy who's been associated with Austin Lawrence more than 20 years. And Rachel Crate, digital marketer, helps us on many of our accounts as a advertising and messaging advisor and writer on our accounts. My name's Ken Lempit. I'm the president of the agency, and it's my job to help align strategy, objectives, and resources to make sure we get everything done for our clients. Jason, if you're ready to go, let's start the SaaS Marketing Rescue Workshop.
Okay, excellent. So, first submission that we have here is from Envision. I'm not sure if we have anybody on from Envision or not. Doesn't look like it. But this is a video ad on LinkedIn. Do we want to show that video real quick? It
Yeah,
doesn't have sound with it, but it does have motion graphics.
yeah, I think we should show it. And I wanna say thanks to the folks at Envision. This is the second time they've participated in a messaging rescue workshop. So, do you want to restart that video for everybody, Jay?
Sure. So starting it again, this is again no sound with this. What I do like about this is that it's showing pretty good like what the problem is that they're solving. The main issue that I have so far, though, is that we're not given enough, I think, in the text or the headlines to get somebody to want to watch that video. So if it comes up within the feed, it might be okay there, but the video running. But I would like to see some more problem agreement in some of the language here. James?
I think it's great to see video. I think, a picture paints 1,000 words, so a video does even more than that. But the opening line in the post copy says, stop fraud uh, while saving money and time. That's a very broad thing to talk about, and so I have to watch the video to be able to understand that this seems to be about some kind of employee fraud and using cameras and visual analysis to figure that out. And I think that watching the video to understand what to expect from it shouldn't really be necessary. So that's something I'd like to see tightened up.
Rachel?
Yeah, so the one thing that stands out to me is the copy itself, like James was saying, it's kind of vague. It doesn't hurt to be specific for the specific cohort that you are advertising to. So, there's different audiences and different customers and, client profiles that you sell to, right? But you can be specific here in the copy about this is your employee fraud system for restaurants. Just really bring in those people that you're specifically targeting with the ad. It's okay to potentially exclude some other people, other features, just to focus on this in this specific ad.
Yeah, I think kind of building on that, Rachel, this kind of animation isn't that expensive to version. So
Right.
it could be both in the copy that surrounds the video as well as in this video itself, where they can focus on employee fraud at restaurants, and they could have another version, employee fraud at convenience stores,
Yes.
another one of their vertical markets. The versioning here wouldn't be all that much at all, and it would make it much more effective for each of the groups they're advertising to. And since this is off of LinkedIn, they would be targeting a specific audience anyway with each campaign. So I think we like the idea and want them to take it further, right, guys?
I think that's a fair
Yeah.
thing to say.
Yeah, one last thing I'd
Sadly.
add before we move on is that, having worked as a bartender in the past,
Mhm.
restaurants, bars, all that kind of stuff are ripe with employee fraud. So I'm sure that the system probably does more than that, but you should be really tapping into how much waste goes into employee fraud and things like that to get the stopping power for somebody to look at this ad where we talk about problem agreement. Everyone in the restaurant industry is going to agree that employee fraud is a problem. So just stick some statistics along with that, potentially how much you're losing if you don't take care of it, and that'll draw people's attention in to watch and interact with the ad. All right, let's move on to the next one. Jennifer, I think you're on. Can I bring you on real quick to talk? Give us some background.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah. So
Wonderful.
I know you had submitted this as messaging, but kind of give us some background as to what we're looking at here.
Yeah, so first of all, we aligned logos. So there's not the white logo and then the color logo. So this is an old copy. This was a different iteration, but the language is correct. So we're doing a conference next week in New York, and this is our banner copy for our booth. It's the the RevOps and Sales Enablement Summit. So these are revenue generating professionals that are going to be there, and we have account management platform for driving revenue. One change on the top, empower your account teams. It's with an S that has been updated, but other than that, we're in good shape here.
Okay, great. So initially, and to give everybody some background, we did an initial work with Capta in the past. Now, kind of looking at some changes that they've made to some of their messaging. And what I like here a lot is that you've got some of these statistics, especially the 20% increase in retention and the other things there. You are tapping into the pain points a lot better, like stalled growth. Surprise churn was a good one. And I highlighted from your notes, there's something on the side. Nothing destroys growth like losing your largest account. Man, oh man, as an agency, can we identify with losing a big account, right? That's a big pain statement. So, but to give you some caution, the main headline here, empower your account team to deliver more revenue. I think empower is a little weak there in terms of an action word. Like to see you wrap some of these pain statements or problem agreement more into that headline. James, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that. The left and the right banners do a great job of setting up the problem and providing statistics. That center banner, I think, could explain the how a little bit more tightly. That headline is going to be the kind of the biggest thing that people see, and it feels like the chop opportunity to really explain how that problem is being met with the solution isn't quite being met.
Yeah, it's the the vague power words that we always talk about, right? Empower or deliver more revenue, the things that they're just phrases we see everywhere, but you
Mhm.
still have to dig in a little bit deeper to know kind of what that means or how you're solving that. I do realize this is a banner and you'll be able to actually speak to somebody in this situation, but agreeing with James on the problem agreement and Jason, it could draw people in sooner. There was something that you had put in the customer challenges that I thought could be effective here is that as an account manager, you're lacking deep insights into the accounts, and that's making it difficult to communicate specific needs, stuff for management, and cross-selling. It yeah, I mean, is there a way to pull that in here to this headline and draw in, hey, this is the issue that I'm having. Oh, I need to go talk to these people.
That's super helpful. I would like to shout out Jason because we did our first conference last year and he came by our booth and I asked him, I had thrown together a marketing banner and it was like so vague and so terrible. And I walked around like all the booths at the conference after and took pictures of their things. And then Jason talked to me for probably an hour, giving me some advice about marketing copy, and he really helped a great deal. And I think this is drastic improvement of what we had, but
Most
definitely.
definitely. Yes. Yeah, you're definitely heading in the right direction. No question.
Thank you. Thank you for the tips today. I'm excited to bring these back, and we actually need to update our copy on our website, and the word empower is so vague, so I appreciate that.
Yeah. Hey, Jennifer, I just want to say I think it's really brave of you guys to contribute this, and we really appreciate it. I am curious if this is the final layout, or is there going to be an art director tasked with laying out your banner before it's produced?
It is produced, and the changes that we made are I moved the logos on the side pieces to the bottom. So they're both on the bottom. And then I moved the logo in the middle to the top at the request of someone on the team. The Empower Your Account team uh, section is moved down slightly, but not low enough that the table will block it. And then all the text has been changed to black to match the logo. We used the black text logo instead of the white text logo. It stood out better on the orange.
Yeah. The only comment I have really is a layout comment. The typography here, it's pretty clear that it was done in-house. And I think a little bit of art direction would go a long way to making your type jump out more on a banner like this. All of the copy is the same size. And one of the things we call that what's important disease. It's hard to know what to look at.
Gotcha.
So next time you do a project like this, I just think it would be cool to, spend a few hours of art director time to have somebody give you just a little more pop for your copy. But
Yeah.
I think there's a lot here to like. And so I'd say, you're shooting at the near ideal with just a couple of changes.
Thank you so much. Just to clarify too, is that something that your group does, is the art directing of the content or like the marketing pieces? Okay. Yeah. We'll
Yeah,
be
absolutely. We
Mhm.
provide, the content and design for clients across their media. So
okay.
whether it's physical media, electronic media.
Okay. You can tell this is not my day job, so just
Happy
Well
to
done for
talk.
coming to the call, Jennifer. It's not easy to stand up there and have criticism aimed at you, so we appreciate it.
No, this is
Yeah.
super helpful. I appreciate you guys doing this.
You bet. All right, let's move on to the next one. Jeff, can I bring you on real quick? So,
I can.
Mojo AI, you submitted a pretty extensive document. This is just a piece of it. So it looks like you've done a lot of work. Can you give us just a bit of a background about the work that you've done with the, finding out or how you came to this document?
Yeah, actually, like that was a template I found on LinkedIn from a company called Fletch. They do
Uh-huh.
product marketing services, and I thought I'll give this a try. Because at the time I was a one-person marketing department. Like we're a
Mm.
startup software company, and so I thought it would be helpful for the organization to kind of have some kind of messaging framework that aligns customer problems with our capabilities.
Yep.
And so this is what I came up with. And you're right, the full document is much bigger, and each of them kind of aligns with one of our features and the problem and a specific problem that feature addresses. And it kind of creates a little mini elevator pitch
Mhm.
when you read across it.
So that's great. We're definitely familiar with Fletch. In fact, I had Anthony on our podcast a long time ago. I love what they talk about in terms of their content, in terms of positioning. I would caution you just a little bit on using their templates, that they are mostly for startups, which you are, and helping to find product market fit, which is great. One of the things that they don't do, though, is interview customers, and you may not have a lot to work with if you're a startup. But that's one of the deficiencies, I think, in the way that they come about their frameworks. But most of the stuff that they come up with in the background is really solid stuff. I like their content and the way that they think a lot. I did just grab a couple of your ads to, I looked at the messaging work that you've kind of done in the background, And then, looking at these two ads, and I thought maybe we could talk about how you could pull some of those themes in when we're looking at some of these advertisements.
Sure.
So
And to clarify, these ads were done before we did
yeah,
that framework. This was a lot of like, let's just throw some stuff out there and see what sticks, which I know is a terrible strategy, but
no, actually, that's a great strategy, especially if you're doing it with the research that you're doing in the past. In fact, one of the books that we've recently read and we really get behind is Gary Vee's Day Trading Attention, which is really that message that the social media has reached a point mostly because of the TikTokification, meaning that like if we get the content right, it's going to scale. It doesn't matter as much about how much audiences that you've developed for your stuff. So essentially anything has the power to go viral at this point on most of the platforms. And so if you're using it to test messaging, it's a great way to do it. The only thing is about LinkedIn, right, is that it is expensive to test there in terms of advertisements. You probably want to do this more organically before throwing too much money in. But right off the bat, my comments on these ads is that I like the stopping power of the picture here, the black and white. Just there's a little bit, it's hard to focus in on that copy. I would probably simplify it, create a bigger headline, and make sure that you are pulling in problem agreement into the headline. So we want people that are looking at the ads to agree with the problem is the best way we think to attract somebody's attention. James?
okay.
Yeah, listen, I think thinking on the previous slide and finding that alignment between problem solution, you're doing exactly the right work there. And so I would echo what Jason says, like you can get some customer insight into that and to test out those ideas and then translate those into language that your customers, your target customers use to talk about their problems. And that then should give you language you can turn into copy for new ads and other places you want to deliver those messages. So I think you're definitely taking the right approach there. For these ads, I again agree with Jason. The use of the photograph is striking. One of the things on LinkedIn that you have the benefit of is copy within the post. So you can have an image and a much bolder headline, which is more attractive. And then let's say you've got that copy space within the post itself to add some more detail and links, things like that. So you don't need to squeeze it all onto the visual space.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rachel.
Yeah, there's truth to that. And I know sometimes, at least from my own personal experience, it can be challenging to figure out how you're going to get all the information you want in the ad when you have very little space to work with. But if you had, for example, that one on the left, this bold, big headline that's, are you still monitoring safety compliance the old-fashioned way? That's not necessarily going to push somebody off if they're not seeing an issue with using the old-fashioned way. So if you put a bold headline about the problems with using that old-fashioned way, and then you can put
Mm,
in your copy something about how you solve that issue, right? I know you said also that these ads were done before the framework, but it's just a potential idea for you to implement using that framework that, you've taken the time and put in the work to figure out all of that messaging, the problems they're having, highlight those issues so they see that right away.
okay. That's good feedback.
The only thing I would say also as a startup, if you don't have a large enough customer base to really do a lot of research with, you can still go to the market, the prospects, and solicit insight from prospects. And in fact, that can even become a business development activity. So depending on where you are in your actual go-to-market journey, your research phase can even become, proto sales conversations while you're gathering the pain points or the problems to be solved in your
Yeah. No,
customer base.
that's interesting. And we're doing a fair number of demos like per week with the sales team. That does seem like maybe I need to schedule some time with them to kind of get an info dump from them to understand what problems are you seeing from the customers that are engaging with, or the prospects that are engaging with us.
Yeah, in fact, a cool thing you can do is if those are being recorded, you can upload those like transcripts or the recordings themselves into either ChatGPT or Google's Notebook LM and
Mm-hmm.
generate a lot of the insights with the aid of AI. So that might be a path to, accelerate your, digesting that context.
Yeah.
That's where whenever we start a new project, we want to do that customer insight research. But actually, where we typically begin first is conversations with salespeople because they own those relationships, so they can often get us to they're the people we use to get those customers. But also, they're having those kind of conversations where they're discussing customer problems. So a good salesperson will often be able to give a lot of great, obviously it's internally facing advice, but it's useful advice on how the target market is thinking and talking about a particular problem. And I also just wanted to just kind of go back on a point that Jason said around using LinkedIn to test copy and advertising design treatments. We can put out for very little money organically a bunch of different treatments and just sort of see ones which that get the best engagement, and then you're making that decision with some guidance based on data, not just our own sense of what we think is going to be more attractive.
Okay.
And then real quick before we move on, just want to say a couple things. So love the idea of talking to salespeople. Would just use the caution that what they're hearing a lot of times, unless it is a salesperson that is well versed in consultative sales methodology and their discovery, are they're hearing the surface level issues or reasons for buying. And you really want to do the work of interviewing customers and asking questions in such a way so that you really understand the emotional drivers, because everybody buys emotionally and justifies rationally. So that's the only caveat and the reason that we like to start with salespeople, but we also like to interview customers to make sure that we are getting that information. And then the second thing, and Rachel alluded on this, but the framework that we like to use is right out of the Challenger sale, which we keep talking about problem agreement in your advertisements. And so that allows us, especially in ads, a little bit harder on a web presence to get all encompassing, but in an ad, we can delve into specifics a lot easier. So you always want to think about in terms of problem agreement. So what is the problem that the client agrees that they need to have solved? That's the first thing. If you can attract people that agree with that, you've won half the battle, because from there you point out deficiencies in the ways that people try to solve that problem today. So we all agree that safety is a problem, right? And that we're losing money because we're not doing this or whatever it is. And then you point out companies try to solve this problem by doing X, Y, Z, and it doesn't work very well, doesn't work at all. It has challenges, whatever it is, you want to point out deficiencies in the ways that they try to do it. And then you provide your reframe, which is how we're doing it differently and how we've proven that to be more successful. So if you look at the problem agreement in that light, then your content is going to be a lot easier to produce because you can just use that formula. Make sense?
Yeah.
Hey, just one more thing for you, Jeff. If you look at the top left of your ads, you've got like your logo and then your company name. And then in the art, you're also running a logo. So I think I'd try and simplify the visual field here a little bit. So try and figure out, maybe how not to have the name repeated twice on the ads up top. And we did have a comment from one of the attendees,
Yes.
just sort of saying, hey, toolbox talk might not be something that would get people to like take an action. So I think your peers in the audience on the webinar also see the need to, highlight the problems and, get to the actions that people can be taking with your help. So
Yeah, toolbox talk is a term within construction industries mostly. So we were comfortable with that, but we found that LinkedIn is not the place that like contractors and subcontractors are going for to find toolbox talks.
Yeah, I mean, we've done actually some work in the construction space, and it makes sense to me what you just said. I think it's sort of the executives at larger firms are going to be caught here versus
Hmm.
the people that, have an F-150 or an F-250, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Facebook is our next plan for that kind of content.
hey, that makes a lot of sense. Really cool media idea, right? Because they're probably checking their feeds, when they're taking a coffee break or lunch, right?
Hmm. Well, that's the hope.
I think it's a good idea, The book that Jason mentioned, Day Trading Attention, be a great place to test that idea before you put money behind it, You could take 30 or 60 days, post daily on your major topics and see which ones, if any, get some engagement. Those platforms now really work on what's known as the interest graph much more than having to have followers. So if your topics resonate, then you'll have a good idea of where you can put some money behind them. So,
Hmm.
And on Facebook, you might have to boost it a little bit, but the cost is fairly nominal.
Yeah.
but I do love the idea of going to Meta. I think that's a smart move.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on. Looking at Jiva. So what they submitted looked like mostly a data sheet or kind of an ebook. And so we started looking at it in terms of like, what are they communicating here? Part of the problem with this is that a lot of this is like really about them and not as much about the problems that they're solving. But that's why we keyed in on this particular page. James, what do you see on this one?
Yeah, I think, this was part of what to me looked like an old-fashioned brochure. And I don't mean old-fashioned in a bad way. Actually, brochures can still have a role to play, often great leave behind content. And so there was a lot of information in this brochure. But at the risk of us sounding like a broken record, I think the thing that always makes sense in B2B marketing, especially, is to get that problem agreement. And so when I looked at this brochure as a whole, and obviously we've not got the benefit of that here, but that wasn't so sharply done. And this page was several pages in. I think we drew out this content because it starts to point towards problem agreement. Right, that would be my advice to Jiva, is to, in any of their marketing, it's always helpful to be clear about what is the problem we're addressing first, and then you can get into how your brand, how Jiva can help. Rachel, let me pass
Yeah.
on to you.
No, thank you.
Mhm.
I agree. It's also a little difficult to do a review on the entire submission that was sent here. So we did pick this page for that reason. It's common to talk about yourself, what your solution is, what you do, right? But why choose Jiva? Again, is this speaking to any pain that somebody's feeling when they're not using when they don't use Jiva, right? So it's just you can upload lab reports, you can have real-time monitoring dashboards. If they've been doing this without your solution and they don't see an issue with the way that they're doing it, none of this is probably going to mean anything to them unless maybe they're open to the idea of we need a solution here, but this is also how many pages in, right, into the document. I think if Jason or James, you can correct me, or Ken, if I'm incorrect, but I think it was something like 11
Several pages in.
pages. Yeah, 10 or
Yeah.
11 pages in. So maybe put that more at the front. Talk
Mhm.
about why you're great, why they need you, but also why they're hurting without you. And don't take so long to get there if possible. But again, I don't know the whole context, so I don't want to potentially offend by with
Mhm.
my comments. But
There's the point of a brochure is something that somebody can kind of sit and spend some time with. And so
Mhm.
normally that would be something somebody would pick up because they choose to. If it's printed, maybe they pick it up at a booth, at an event, or it gets sent to them as a kind of a leave behind after a meeting. And it's kind of nice to have a brochure. There's a place there we can kind of explore all sorts of ideas and case studies and deliver messages. But I think having that problem agreement up front, and even with a long form copy, you still only have a limited amount of someone's time and attention to kind of to encourage them to want to spend time with it and keep turning the page. And so I think that's to take your point, Rachel, bring that up front, make the point relevant, clear problem agreement with the reader, and that will encourage them to want to explore and find more copy that's relevant to them.
Right. And if this is something that they're seeing after they've already, that agreement has been established, then it might not be as important to worry about talking about the problems that they're having, right? But still, sooner, why not talk yourself up a little bit sooner in the document?
Yeah, I mean, to me, this should be the real payoff, right? It says, why choose this solution? Why choose Jiva as your clinical trials, workflow management software? And so if I have 6 or 8 problems that I know are the greatest hits in my client and prospect organizations, these capabilities could easily be converted into answering, the greatest hit problems. I think also when you look at these guys' website, they tend to over communicate. And I think that's perhaps the nature of this business is it's very detail oriented. But at this point in our relationship with prospects, we really need to get to the matter quickly and get them to the point of wanting to learn more. And ultimately, the literature, even though it might be a resource we spend 15 or 30 minutes with, its whole mission in life is to get people to take a next step. And I just don't think the communications are really doing a good job of that we've seen. So probably highly capable, really important solution in search of superior communications. So great software, need to level up the comms.
And the last comment I would say about this too is that as I'm researching companies in the SaaS space, I'm finding quite a few of these that are dealing with clinical trials. So the point is that you're going to have to differentiate yourself out of the gate. And this applies to any companies that are, finding that they all of a sudden have quite a bit of competition in a space. One shows that there's a need for it, which is good. But whenever that happens, you've got to show differentiation. So again, I go back to our formula where the way that you get that is that you, again, attract people that agree with the problem. So what are the problems with today's clinical trial processes that you just, you have to take action, because then you can point out, if you attract them, you can point out why the other systems in the field are deficient. And then you provide your reframe. And that's, the why you choose Jiva. But don't think about it in terms of just bulleting out your features, right? That's not going to attract it. You've got to tie those features to solving those problems that we agree that we had in the beginning. And if you do that right, you're going to lock out your competition. They're not even going to look at them because you've educated them on this whole process and they agree with you, or at least you'll have the lead. All right, let's look at the last one is iBase-T. Tom, I think you're on. This was another one, Tom, you gave us a lot to look at here, what looked like a sales deck. We singled out this slide because you're starting to talk about problem agreement here, which again is
Right.
what we're talking about. But give us some background on what we were looking at with the whole document.
Yeah, what I had sent over to you guys is basically what we would call a first call deck. So this is for sales and for sales usage. It comes after marketing has identified a prospect within the ICP, obviously, and BD has gone through a process of qualification and obviously take it over to sales and have them accept the opportunity, and then we'll do a crossover call with that prospect to introduce the salesperson and to get them in there. So this is their opportunity for first interaction, first call, first impression, right? This slide is exactly right. It's problem agreement. There's in our industry, aerospace defense manufacturing, there's a lot of create and educate that needs to happen on these processes and work through. So long sales cycle, long business development cycle as we go here. So first impression is always important. And it's this deck as well as just more overview. In particular, this slide basically is showing setting up all the issues and pains that a prospect faces and then what Illumina can address. So it never necessarily stands alone. It may be sent out ahead of the meeting, but there's always going to be some narrative and walkthrough around the benefits of reducing technical debt and total cost of ownership for all these systems to bring it onto our platform and be able to do that. So that's where we're at with this.
Great. Okay, that's kind of what I figured that we were looking at. So being that it's a sales deck or almost like a capabilities or a demo presentation or precedes a demo presentation, I would caution that you want to lead again with problem agreement and less about the company. So in the deck that you had, I saw some standard things that I've seen in decks for a long time, 30 years plus. You've got to avoid, what like David Sandler calls the show up and throw up, which is a lot of what we're seeing in those decks. The way you get around that again is by delving into the problem right away. If we can get them nodding their heads right up front that yes, we have this problem and it's one that's worth solving. Again, we've solved half the battle because then we can introduce the features and things like that as how we're solving the problem differently, and that's key. James?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. So I think, Tom, I really love the headline here, what's the problem we solve? That's so crisp and clear in setting up what this slide's about and showing the relevance to the buyer. So question I had for you, because there's kind of two parts going on this slide. We set up that question, what's the problem we solve? We've got three kind of bullet points, and I guess these are the kind of the key problem messages we talk about. And then on the other sort of 2/3 of the slide, we've got some more specifics. So my question to you is, how confident are you that those three bullet points are the primary problems that you're solving?
And solving for that particular prospect, right?
Right. Yeah.
So each of these enterprises would face a different challenge and a different set of challenges within there. But in general, we know we're experts in aerospace and defense and what they're doing in manufacturing and really what hits most relevancy. So these have been tested and been put in front of customers before. This seems to what is feedback from sales as to the three that in particular work. That's the point that we're at. Of course, we want to do our discovery ahead of time. That's what my BD team is really doing in finding out more about what situation is there. So it could be edited before. Yeah.
It feels to me you've got a really sharp kind of response to that question. What's the problem we solve on the left third here? And I really like that. And if you're confident going to the meeting that there's some understanding of the customer and that these are relevant responses to that question that you want to discuss with them, I would keep this slide a lot cleaner and just sort of focus on that. The stuff which is on the other 2/3 on the right, that feels like these are potential conversation starters for a whole range of pain points and challenges they might be feeling. But it kind of makes it look like you're unclear about what problem it is you're solving. There's an awful lot going on there. And so maybe there's on another slide a place to lay out a whole load of pain points and to have a conversation like, are these ones that you recognize? But I would avoid doing all of that on one slide. And then just a design point of view, it's a little hard to read copy on top of copy. So where you've got Solumina and your subhead there on top of all the little boxes below, it's just a little hard to look at.
Right. Okay. Yep. Good. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Just one idea I thought of as James was saying that, what might be nice here is a Venn diagram with Solumina in the middle, right? Like where you have all these things in circles and then overlapping all of these issues that creates a really clear picture, right?
Right.
This is a little bit segmented. It's kind of hard to figure out.
Yeah. Well, it works as a build as well.
Mhm.
I don't know if you
Okay.
guys had the automation on, but all the problems will come out at you, and then Illumina will sit on top of it. But
Got it. Okay. Gotcha.
perfect
Okay.
use case. You know, it's likely the audience is going to be looking at as a standing slide. So yeah, good feedback.
Very good. We just to mention, I did pull a couple of your LinkedIn ads as well. But Rachel, what should you want to deal with, the brochure or the ads?
Ads. I don't have any comments that are different than what was already made on the
Great.
slide there. Do you want to start with me here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So, I mean, okay. Well, hopefully this still applies based on the fact that these problems we solve could possibly change for the client. But again, are we talking to the problems in the copy here on the ads? It's improving overall. So okay, I'm looking at the one on the left. Actually, Jason, do you want to play the video?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
And these are pretty nice, well-produced videos.
I need some context.
Okay, so here's the first one.
Develop the technology that identifies and augments the path ahead. But we're more than a platform. We're a people. As one, we work hand in hand with our partners to embark on successful builds that enable critical projects all over the world. Whether it's protecting interests at home or abroad, supplying hospitals with life-saving medical equipment, or sending spacecraft to explore the cosmos, we deliver today to determine tomorrow.
Do you also want to see the second one?
Sure.
Yeah, so that one you just saw was considered we did a recent rebrand, and we quote unquote that was the brand video that would launch the new look, new feel, new message.
Okay.
Definitely well
There's
produced. I
only
like
so
it.
many companies out there going to build satellites, fighter jets, nuclear weapons. These are products that cannot fail. That's the niche that we fulfill. We're a very purpose-built solution for that complex, discrete manufacturer.
Man, she like outlines the problem agreement big time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is what I really like about that.
Yeah, that.
Yeah,
I mean,
those are what we call the expert series. So we've gone across the company and found people who know the problem the best, right, and be able to put them on camera and talk about specifically around what is the problem that we address and solve. So
To me, helping you build things that cannot fail, that seems to be like a really great unifying message, at least for a big part of your customer base. The idea that you're building a product that is truly mission critical and we're the enabling technology that it works every time. I think that's pretty powerful. And about the worst thing that could happen to any of your customers and prospects, I imagine, is a reputation for products that actually do fail in the field. So
yeah.
That seems to me super powerful and might be the kind of thing that could be even a unifying message if it really researches and resonates well.
Yeah, yeah, it's huge, and this is all kind of the brand message that we put out there. The challenge, anyways, is brand and demand messaging versus lead generation messaging, and that's a whole nother webinar to talk about. Where you invest and where you focus on and weigh what's the mix, right? So.
Yeah. Hey, just one thought that we use, and I think it's helpful with especially financial partners in the marketing process, is talk about it in terms of portfolio management. It's, as a marketing and revenue leader, I'm looking at weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, and a little bit beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to invest across that timeline. So it changes the nature of the conversation from lead gen to demand gen to time horizon. And the fact that these investments that are a little further out are actually more efficient is a great CFO conversation.
Yeah, yeah. Good, thanks.
I would say, I really love these videos, these brand messages. One doesn't always see a lot of that these days, and I think this is really nicely executed. And there's a message of competence which is being delivered here very strongly. And I think, as Ken says, that's a great unifying message that when you look at the what's on the slide deck, I know we're kind of a few clicks down here between kind of demand generation into lead generation, and the deck's more concerned with lead generation. But that unifying message is like, we're a competent company to work with, can still kind of be brought into that lead gen, because these are, the three problems that you're solving there are all speak to kind of the competence and the trust that you provide for your customer.
Yeah, and
So it'd be great to bring that across.
yeah, that's ultra important. And I think it was Jason talking earlier about just the fact that, they're not just buying a technology, but they're buying the trust and the expertise and the ability to deliver. So it's more than just a technology here. So
Yeah, you've got specifics in those 3 points, but it's all in the context of that being trusted and knowing that they can rely on you. So I'd love to see that on that slide in some way, and perhaps move some of those other kind of sub points onto the next slide for deeper discussion.
Yeah, and you mentioned walking the line between, demand generation or lead generation and, kind of brand awareness, something we talk about all the time. I don't necessarily think, though, that you have to decide on either or. So, for example, in this case, these ads are not going to generate leads. But if you thought about it in terms of like, how can we educate on problem awareness? Like maybe there's a big problem that we can get them aware of that'll engage with the copy. So again, I don't have a problem with these ads. It's well produced, but it is about you, right? It's not about the problem. It's about, more about the company. So these assume that people already understand that they have a problem and that they're looking for solutions.
yeah.
Right. So just keep that in mind.
Well, I think what may be helpful is to do a series. We do a series on who we are and what we do, the expertise of what we do. But let's hear from the customer as well. So
Yeah.
can we do a series that interviews the customer, that the customer talks about their pain points and what Illumina is doing to solve that? So,
Absolutely. That's the way you find it. Also, I like your tagline here, but I don't like it as a CTA. Right?
That's what I was going to point out, is there a way to put that in the video maybe so that it's still there, but find a CTA that's more action oriented.
yeah, agree. Got it.
All right. Any other comments?
Hard, coming on these calls, having everyone pick it apart.
That's okay.
Well
That's
done,
good.
Tommy. We appreciate it.
It's excellent feedback. Thanks, guys.
All right. So that's pretty much it. So we want to offer again our free marketing and messaging review. For those of you that submitted like a lot of the stuff to review, this would be great for you, and it's free. So I urge you to take us up on it. We'll look a little bit more in depth, and if you want, we can have a pre-call looking at those sales decks or the work that you've done so that we can look a little more extensively into your ads or websites or whatever and suggest some things that would help you to create the narratives that you want that are really going to move people off of status quo.
We also have, if we have a couple of minutes, 2 questions we might be able to answer, wrap up here.
Absolutely.
Okay. I haven't clicked answer live, but we'll see. So the first question here, if a client has 3 major problem statements, should they create 3 separate ads and rotate them, so to speak? And I would say, yeah, it doesn't hurt. You can also try them as organic social first and see what messages are resonating there, and then put money behind the ones that are working stronger. But it doesn't hurt to get very specific. So why not do an ad on each problem? Right.
Yeah.
Ads and content, definitely.
Three statements, problem statements, try it out 3 ways. I think there's space to try out 9 ideas here.
Yeah.
And try it organically, right? Like come up with some things on LinkedIn, for example, if your market is there, and see if you can test some of those messages, then you know where to put money behind it. But again, think in terms of problem agreement, not about you and your features. You want to think about, the problems that you're solving that we can get them to agree with.
And we have, what do you believe is required in the copy and initial video graphic to get an ad viewer to click?
They got to scroll through their feed, like on LinkedIn, and immediately think, yes, that is a problem that I have to solve. That's what you want them to think when they see your ad.
Yeah, we are a stuck record today. We're definitely on problem review, but it really is what it's all about. You've got, especially like people are scrolling past on their phone, you've got moments to catch their attention. So it's got to be really on point, relevant for them, absolutely a problem that they are experiencing. I think this is why it kind of goes to trying that out multiple different ways, because it's hard to kind of put ourselves inside the customer's head. We can do research, we can make good attempts at getting that messaging right, but we need some feedback, from our market to see what really resonates with them. So try the message multiple different ways, get some insight on what works, and then put your budget behind what is most successful. And that's the way to make your copy work, and having some video or graphic and visual, which is striking and easy to understand as you're scrolling quite quickly, really helps to get it across.
Right.
I would say also keep the cognitive load a little low. So the idea that we're going to do everything in one piece of creative, I think, is tempting. But if you have three main ideas, at least three ads, if not 9 or 27, and see who survives. So, Rachel, I know I stepped on you there, so if you want to jump in.
No, it's perfect. It goes off of even what you were saying. So you can try the same message with different visual, right? So that way it's a way of testing to know, is it the message that's resonating, right? Or is it the visual that's resonating? And just keep iterating on this and testing different, the graphic at the beginning of the video or the thumbnail image, the copy. What is it that is catching their attention? And then you can go and make more things that are similar to that and put money behind them. But yeah, why not take 3 ads, turn them into 9 or 27? And it feels like a lot of work, but it pays off to know really, okay, this is the strongest message, this is the strongest image, graphic, video, and go from there.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think I've been working in advertising quite some time, and it always feels like, my opinion should matter. And I think in the end, it's the data that should be speaking. And I love my opinions, but I love the data more. So don't be afraid to try things that go against your instinct, but might have a chance to perform in a superior way, as long as they're on brand, they're appropriate to the situation at hand, of course. But I think if you could take the books, the Challenger Marketer and Gary Vee's Day Trading Attention, if you could put those two things together, you'd have a great methodology from which to bring your advertising into contemporary best practices.
Very good. And as a parting thought, I'll talk about my favorite example from John Carlton about how to think about this, which is your perfect prospect walks into a bar and orders a double. Bartender says, "Wow, rough day." Your prospect says, "Man, rough month." What is the problem that they're talking about that they're going to start talking to the bartender about? That's what you want to develop your messaging around. That's the problem agreement. Very good. With that, I'll say thank you very much for the submissions. We enjoy doing this. Hope you got some value out of it. We will be doing this monthly. So if you have more to submit or know anybody else that needs messaging work done, please send them our way. Other than that, I will wrap it up. Thank you for attending.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. And again, encourage you to take us up on the offer of the free marketing and messaging review. It's a really great offer and no obligation to go further than that as well.